Hey guys, welcome back to another Vanguard video. Today we're talking about the Blaster Blade start deck and we have the full card list right here. Big noticeable thing is that we have the Loyal Dog Cerrgaon as well as Twincast as the reprint here. So I have to say the reprint quality in this deck is a lot better than the Overlord TD, but I think the strength in terms of not having to upgrade it out of the box is a little bit weaker compared to the Overlord start deck. But overall, I would still say it's quite good. I think the only thing you really have to swap out is maybe the ride line, but you, of course, can be playing Marron. And I'll talk, of course, about the generics and card list at the very end. So before I get to the ride line, I want to first talk about the fighter icon. And this is pretty much just to recap that cards with the same name are still limited up to the amount of copies you can play, because we do have cards that already exist, such as Starry Sky Knight Zero as the con that it's also regarded as Gallatin, as well as the Virgilla Soul Saver, so just do keep in mind, and also the old Festival King of Knights Alfred as well. So for a total, you can only play 4 cards with the same name in a deck. And do note for the fighter icon, this is pretty much referenced by other cards for abilities such as revealing or for adding to hand, for example, but they're also considered as being encounter cards because they only have a card with only one clan, which is Royal Paladin at the bottom right. Very similar to how Kai has basically the Kagura icon on his fighter icon card, so just basically a very specific reference that you do need to know for the TD, but I just wanted to get that out of the way so people are aware of it. Alright, so first off, we have Barcgal with the auto and wrote upon if you went second to draw a card. So next up, we do have Wingal that does give a Forerunner ability to your starter, but it's a little bit disappointing, I'll be honest. So you have the auto when placed on Vanguard Circle, you cost reveal a grade 3 with an Aichi icon from your ride deck. You choose a Barcgal with an Aichi icon from your soul called Cerrgaon Circle, and it gains the red text until the end of the fight. You can act Rest It to search your deck for up to one Flogal called Cerrgaon Circle and shuffle your deck. So in case you didn't see in the card list, Flogal is one of the crits in your deck, so essentially calling a crit out for a free body on board. Most of the time you will be calling Barcgal behind Vanguard because you're going to call the Flogal to side just to have another body so you can have the full requirements of an entire board for Alfred because you can't boost the new Alfred as well. But I do think your other options for the ride deck are a lot better in terms of grade 1s, such as Tranquilla or Marron, which we'll talk about later. But it also has the skill Auto Regard Circle when boosting a Blaster Blade. It gets +5 until end of battle, so Blaster Blade does have a way to get +10 when attacking a grade 3 greater Vanguard, so you can actually make a very nice 33k number. Alright, so next up is Blaster Blade, and this of course is the Aichi fighter icon version. Auto when placed on Vanguard Circle or Regard Circle, you choose a grade 3 with an Aichi icon from your ride deck and you may reveal it. If either you revealed or you have a grade 3 greater Vanguard with an Aichi icon, you cost either Counter Blast 1 or Energy Blast 3, so great to have that flexibility in terms of cost there. Choose when your opponent's rearguards, retire it, and this unit was placed on Vanguard Circle, you draw a card. Because the OG Blaster Blade we had from BT05 could only retire grade 2 or greaters, this is just straight up an upgrade. And of course, being able to Energy Blast instead of Counter Blast is just a great way to use up your energy, because nothing else in this deck really uses energy unless you're putting in generics such as the Ace unit or Biscotti, so it's just a really great inclusion. It also has the Auto Regard Circle skill once per turn. When it attacks a grade 3 greater unit, if you have Vanguard with an Aichi icon, it gets +10 until end of turn. So pretty much will always be active because you're always going to be on a grade 3, with an Aichi icon, making some very, very good numbers with a 13k or bigger booster. So next up is King of Knights Alfred with the continuous, the normal ride of this card from a grade 3 unit with an Aichi icon, and a different name from this card also becomes a Persona ride, so you can Persona ride Soul Saver on top and then go back into Alfred if you wanted to do that. So very similar to the Kai deck, you can basically Persona ride on any of your grade 3s, which is a really great inclusion. Then it has the continuous Vanguard Circle skill. During your turn, this unit cannot be boosted, very similar to the original Alfred. It gets +2k for each of your rearguards, so totaling 10, whether you go first or second. And then if you have 3 more rearguards, it gets Dry +1, so that part is not grade restricted, which is very strong. And then if you have 4 more rearguards and you Persona Road this turn, it also gets crit +1. So easy crit pressure. Obviously, the crit pressure is pretty much tied to Persona Ride this turn because it's an AND clause, not an OR clause, just to get that out of the way. But either way, it's very easy to get power and scale up. And your early game, of course, as Keter Sanctuary is going to be very, very strong with the cards in this TD and the cards you could also be upgrading it with. Then you have the last skill, which is Auto Vanguard Circle once per turn. When it attacks, you cost Counter Blast 1. Search your deck for 2 cards with an Aichi icon, call them to Regard Circle in the same column, and shuffle your deck. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 greater, the called units get +5k power until end of turn. So you make a very easy call and basically just to rush down your opponent. So this Vanguard is pretty much the equivalent to Overlord. You're doing 4 attacks going first with 3 drives, which is kind of like the standard for, the format right now, but still pretty nice that you do get basically a deck thin 2 every turn for CB1. It's just that there's nothing in this TD that discounts CB, so I think you really do have to play Dindrain or Dissection Angel, but Dissection Angel is very expensive. So I'll talk about those options more when we get to cards you can be playing in the deck, but I think overall Alfred is just a very strong Vanguard, especially for turn 3, just to get that easy Dry +1 and to scale over defensive. Alright, so the first card to talk about is Lake Maiden Lien, and this card is amazing. It's an easy generic included as a 4F in the TD. So auto when discarded from hand during your ride phase, you perform one of the following. You call this card to Rearguard Circle as Rest, or you can cost Soul Blast 1 and call this card to Rearguard Circle as Stand, which is insanely strong. Then auto, when placed on Rearguard Circle, you may draw a card. If you did, you choose a card from your hand and discard it. So it has synergy with a lot of the discard effects that already exist in Keter Sanctuary or with itself, so you can double Lien going first or second, which is crazy. A lot of the times you won't probably double Lien going second because of the soul, but going first, it's really easy to call this as rest or even call 2 as rest. And of course, you get that easy cycle. And you may draw once, you don't even have to use it, but a lot of times you will, just to cycle through your deck and find your pieces. This is also just very good in a lot of decks. Saw a lot of people talking about this in Luard as well as in Draconis as well, certain someone. And I also think this is really good in Youth and really just a lot of Keter decks. It's just a free body on board for you to rush with. It's so easy to fill up your board in Keter Sanctuary in some decks right now, such as Youthberg, but it's just even more free early game. I think this could also be really good filter for Minerva as well. I just think Minerva would rather play more Genesis name cards, and you already had to cut space for the Nebula Knight order. But yeah, this card is just really, really good. I think Luard is the easiest one to throw it in because it's just a grade 1. But of course, any other Keter deck can use this very well. It's just such a good generic that you are definitely going to be wanting to pick up from the TD. Next card is Little Sage Marron, and this is the other contender for the ride deck. So auto when it rides from hand, so if you would do that instead of the ride deck, you can pay 1 less soul for this cost. When placed on Vanguard Circle, you cost Soul Blast 1, reveal grade 3 with an Aichi icon from your ride deck, and when you would ride from the ride deck during the ride phase of your next turn, you can ride without discarding a card. So basically the Regilla effect, but you're doing it on turn 1. Then auto when placed on Rearguard Circle, if you have a Vanguard with an Aichi icon, you cost put a normal unit with only Royal Paladin for its clan without Sentinel from your drop on the bottom of your deck. So basically more targets for Alfred to call out as well as stopping your deck out, and this unit gets plus 5k power until end of turn, making that magic 13k, which is so nice. So I think Marron is just a great card to get either in main deck or in your ride deck. But of course, in your ride deck, that's saving you hand when you ditch for next turn, because you're probably saving cards to either rush back your opponent while building a board, or of course to defend yourself so you don't have to ditch for the ride up on the next turn. Next card to talk about is Knight of Truth Gordon. This card isn't too great, but it's okay as a card out of the box. So auto when placed on Rearguard Circle, you cost counter plus 1 and gets plus 10k until end of turn. That's also not grade restricted, so kind of crazy. Then if it was placed by the ability of your King of Knight Alfred with an Aichi icon, you draw a card. Then continues on Guardian Circle. If you have Vanguard with the Aichi icon, it gets shield plus 5. There's other generics you're going to be playing. You also have to play Gallatin as well, and I'll talk about Starry Sky Knight 0 in the list as well. But for the most part, this is basically what you're cutting if you're trying to make the deck competitive, but it's alright, just kind of out of the box from the TD. Next card is Knight of Silence Gallatin, and this is what is competing with Starry Sky Knight 0. So you have auto Rearguard Circle when it attacks. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with an Aichi icon, it gets plus 5k power until end of turn. Again, not grade locked, so it's really easy to make like 28, whatever magic numbers going first. Then auto and drop, when your grade 3 or greater Vanguard with an Aichi icon is attacked, you can cost to bind this card, and that unit gets plus 10k power until end of battle. So basically giving that 10k shield. So in total, he's 15k shield if you were to intercept and then use it in another battle. But obviously during the battle you intercepted, he's not in drop. And you cannot bind cards with the same name as his card from drop until end of turn. So you'd likely play either a 2-2 split or a 3-1. But I do think Starry Night Sky 0 is just really easy to close out the game because of the way he closes out autos, which I'll talk about when we get to him. But yeah, Knight of Silence Skeleton is honestly a pretty good card in the TD as well. Just nowhere near as custom as like Nahelm in the ride deck. And I'm also surprised they didn't like copy paste an effect like that to kind of give him a Maple ride phase effect or a way to reduce the CB for the Vanguard skill. But overall, he's just a very simple card that's kind of alright in the deck. Probably going to be cut for some other stuff, especially because your space in terms of generics kind of gets tight. But there's a lot of really good cards in Keter Sanctuary you could be playing anyways that I'll talk about. Alright, last but not least, we have Soul Saver Dragon, which is very similar to Vortex, but without the front row retire, but you basically get the plus 5. So continuous the normal ride of this card from a grade 3 unit with an Aichi icon and different card name from this card also becomes a Persona ride. So of course you can Persona ride this on top of Alfred. Act on Vanguard Circle once per turn, you cost counter plus 1, Soul Blast 1 grade 3 with an Aichi icon, and until end of turn, this unit gets auto Vanguard Circle once per turn. When it attacks, you choose a column, send all of your rear guards in that column, and they get plus 5k power until end of turn. If you Persona row this turn, you choose 2 columns instead of 1, and all your front row units get plus 5k power. So technically you could put this in the ride deck and ride it on turn 3, but it's most definitely like a turn 4 card, because you can use Krakoa to easily shove any of your grade 3s with an Aichi icon into your soul for the cost. But for the most part, you do want to use this on your Persona ride turn, because then you're doing 5 attacks and your columns are going to be absolutely massive, including the Starry Sky Knight 0, which is going to have that ability to turn off autos. So just a very, very strong grade 3 card. Despite not being able to have any superior call, which I thought was something that was going to be here, even though Soul Saver originally doesn't. It's just weird there isn't like another line of text here, just like the Vortex Dragon, because Vortex Dragon's basically the same thing without the front row plus 5k power, but it wipes your opponent's entire front row. Then you also have Continuous Guardian Circle, and this is a mistranslation here that Kyrus also noted for editing. If you have basically a Vanguard with the Aichi icon, it gets shield plus 10. So it's never a 0 shield, it's always shield in your hand in case you do have to use it in order to survive. So honestly, Soul Saver Dragon looks really good. It's definitely your best finisher, and I think Alfred is just amazing as well. It's really easy to play both copies or just play lower copies of Alfred as well if you want Soul Saver as your finisher. But yeah, Cocoa can also cheese out that act if you do want to get it on turn 3 or earlier. But for the most part, I think the Soul Saber Dragon is just the best finisher in the deck and definitely one of the best cards out of the TD. Alright, so now to talk about the deck building. First off, we have the rod deck options. As I mentioned earlier, Wingal's alright, but doesn't exactly feel the greatest. I think most people will go for Marron just because of that free ride up is really nice. Tranquilla is also a great option because you're likely going to be playing a lot of grade 1s. The only problem with Tranquilla is that because you aren't on a clan icon, you basically can't activate Cocoa going second, which is really, really strong in this deck because you can instantly tri-lane your opponent while stacking a trigger. So I'd say that's one of the biggest trade-offs to playing Tranquilla, but it's also just keeping yourself soul as well compared to like Marron and Wingal, which, you know, is calling out, you know, either soul blasting one or calling out your starter to have that red text skill to call out Flogel. So most of the time you are going to be just be playing Blaster Blade in the rod deck, but you could also be playing the Alden grade 2 as well as Blaster Dark. But for the most part, having Blaster Blade in the rod deck is just an easy secure, and you could also soul blast it out and add it off Diarang. Alright, for the cards that will definitely be included, of course, there's Cerrgaon as well as the Nebula Knight Order. In case you don't know what the Nebula Knight Order does, you can basically play it from drop on turn 3, and it basically just binds itself. You check top 7, call something for free. It's just an amazing generic that we are getting in DZBT12. Another card we're also getting as a DZBT12 box topper is Knight of Silence Gallatin, aka Starry Sky Knight 0. They have a comp where they're regarded as the same name, and this guy is really, really strong. You have easy early game to Energy Blast 3 instead of C being 1 to draw 1 in the early game. It also gets easy power, and it also has the really strong ability when it's restood by a card such as Soul Saver to turn off autos during its battle, so your opponent can't PG. If you flip enough triggers, it's just super strong. Can also turn off autos for restand heals, even for autos such as D-Roar to bounce something, so it's kind of like a big knowledge check there as well. Just a very, very strong card, so you're most definitely going to be seeing these 3 cards in like every single list for this deck. Alright, so now to talk about some of the more important cards in the deck, which of course are Battle Sister Cocoa. This card is just so strong in Minerva, really good in Alfred, and it's going to be amazing in this deck as well. On place on Rearguard Circle, so it's not even from hand, so if you called off the Nebula Knight Order as well, it'll also activate. You put a card from hand into your soul to check the top 2 cards of your deck. You choose a card from among them, put it into your hand. You put the rest on the top of the deck or into soul. Then if you put a card into soul by this effect, it gets plus 5k power until end of turn, making some really nice columns. Then it also has the continuous Rearguard Circle and Guardian Circle skill. Opponent's Vanguard's grade through greater, and your opponent's drive check or damage check reveal the trigger, it gets plus 10k power or plus 10k shield. So just a really strong early game and late game card that is just going to be easily rushing down your opponent while also stacking a trigger if you see a crit or a front on top. Dissection Angel is also very flexible here. While you're not probably putting it behind Alfred, it's just easy to Soul Blast 2 when you drive check something to countercharge 1, get plus 5k power. It's also just Painkiller in the early game, so you can, you know, slam a bunch of rears, attack your opponent while keeping a hand as well, because a lot of your grade 2s and grade 1s, as well as your ride line, of course, are going to be plussing you. So its injuries on place is if you have a Vanguard with only 1 clan, you can Soul Blast 2 to countercharge 1, so you can catch your opponent off guard if they think you have to play for a Dissection first before an on attack, because that can be very, very awkward. And basically catch your opponent off guard in scenarios where they think they can damage deny you, get away with it, when all of a sudden you just main phase countercharge, which can be very, very annoying. And then, of course, the other grade 1 is Lien as well, because this card is just so good. You have to play some copies of it, if not 4. It's just such a good early game card, and it's going to cycle you into your pieces that you want in the early game. And of course, it's just another body on board to just rush down your opponent with. Alright, so more cards to talk about. We have Diarang. I think this is the one that most JP and English players will go for because this card is really strong in just salvaging any of your Persona Rides or Sentinels from drop. So on place on Rearguard Circle, if your Vanguard has only 1 clan, you can Soul Blast 1, discard a card from hand. You choose a card with only the same clan as your Vanguard's clan from drop and put it into your hand. So because we have Assault now that is a Royal Paladin PG, you can finally add that back to your hand. Being able to reuse PGs is so strong, and this also has some synergy with Gancelot as well when you discard him, which is something I'll talk about in a second. And you also have very strong defensive cards, such as him bringing with Mercy. This is the Hostage package. You can call Assault out of deck off Alfred and Hostage that off. And Perius is also very strong if the Overlord deck isn't super popular. So unfortunately, I think Perius and Brim hemming with Mercy won't be too popular because I think Overlord will be everywhere. And retiring Perius just basically means you can't use it. And of course, they're going to retire your PG, so you don't get to hostage it unless you play the ladder that turn, kind of like preemptively. But yeah, for the most part, I think Diarang is definitely the card you're going to see more of instead of Perius and him, just because it's so flexible at grabbing any of your pieces back from drop into your hand, or of course a PG, so you can live the following turn. Alright, so now for your very obvious 1-ups, we have the Ace Unit Topaz. These are just early game cards or late game cards that will just make out a board, be very good attackers. I think Clygo is something I kind of just threw in here for the slide, but it is really interesting as a 1-up. You can kind of think of it as like the 1-up for Summit Flare that Alpha Knights was playing to check top 7 and grab a grade 3 greater that's a different name, because when you're on Alfred, you're likely going to be playing more main deck Soul Savers than Alfred to basically grab for your Persona Ride. And if not, it could be also grabbing you grade 3 greater cards because it doesn't specify units. It could also be grabbing your Regulus pieces, such as Fire Regulus, Caliburn, or Shroud in Darkness, whatever you're playing basically, that is your grade 3 Regulus piece. So just a very flexible card you could be considering as a 1-up in the deck. Alright, now obviously to address the elephant in the room, which is Ganslot. There's very good synergy here just to basically ditch Ganslot and add Blaster Blade to your hand. But for the most part, we also have Brightyarch, Spiral Cutie, a lot of really funny synergy you could be doing basically with Lien to basically draw a bunch of cards in a turn, as well as Harvick that does eat up your soul very fast. But if you are playing, not Marron as your ride deck, it's definitely very realistic to get off. And you can really just cycle through your deck very, very, very fast. Might lead you to deck out, but honestly, you have cards that bottom deck themselves, such as Ganslot as well as Marron, that you could be playing. So I don't think it's too much of an issue. There's also Exalted Dragon as well for ditch fodder as well. So a lot of really funny Keter Sanctuary ditch fodder you could be playing. But I think Ganslot is just a card that is very strong because it gains that crit going first. It does bottom deck itself afterwards though if you do gain that crit, but it gains plus 5k power for your opponent's Vanguard, which is really, really strong against specifically Dragon Tree as well as Legion decks. So it could be quite a pesky thing because you're going to be resetting a column, calling it out of deck off Alfred, and the other side is going to be quite annoying to guard because Ganslot gets +5. So when your opponent's grade 2, he's already 23, any other booster 36. That's already really annoying to guard without a defensive 2 crits to your face. And of course, that's not including Alfred's 3 drives where you could be hitting a bunch of triggers there as well. The last thing that I think is really funny is the combination of Diana with Tranquilla. You can basically just make some really, really crazy numbers that just completely explode your opponent going first, because you have that +10 from Diana when anything is placed from deck, such as off Cocoa or off Tranquilla. So it's very, very easy to make some really messed up numbers that your opponent has to guard going second, and then finish them off on your grade 3 turn if you somehow rush them hard enough or flipped enough critical triggers. So the last thing to talk about are the Regulus pieces. I think the discard and drop effects are the easiest things to get in here, which are Fire Regulus and Twincast. A lot of decks will just play 2 to 3 Nebula Knight Order and then 1 Fire Regulus, of course, as your Regulus piece of choice. I think Primordial Heartblaze is also a great option in case you want some extra Persona Rides, but unfortunately it doesn't have the countercharge effect. That's only for these strides, but it can basically be a Persona Ride from drop, which is kind of nice. And Primordial Heartblaze, of course, is also very easy to ditch because it can be played from drop. Shroud in Darkness is also just a very easy card to throw into the deck as well if you do have it lying around, want to try it out. I don't think it's going to be a popular one because, it doesn't have the drop effect. You kind of have to hold it till turn 3, which feels bad, but it is 2 cards onto your board if you have to hard play it for CB1. I think Radiance Caliburn might be something Sumless play because you don't really have any countercharge unless you are playing Din Drain during the main phase, so it could be an option. I think Union the Sky is also an option as well if you are playing a lot of grade 3 Alfreds or Soul Savers, because you are likely going to be cycling a lot of grade 3s. Of course, since Soul Saver has that 10k shield, it's really easy to guard with and get into drop. So, if you do have a Vanguard with the Synonym in your drop, you can remove it. So you get that extra 25k shield instead of 15k while also drawing 1, and it also acts as another Biscotti or discard fodder in your deck, which is really good and can again combo with Lien. Alright, so finally talk about some deck building for the Blaster Blade start deck. I do know that people are going to be saying that, of course, it doesn't look as strong as Overlord, but of course you have the power of Keter generics, which of course there are a lot of here. Obviously, we got Nebula Knight Order here at 2 just to make deck space, and of course we have 4 Cerrgaon, 4 Soul Saver. Ganslot is also in here as easy ditch fodder for Lien or for ride deck. So you can search Blaster Blade, just have a lot of really easy early game. Gallatin's going to be drawing you cards, and of course is your closer with the auto ability to turn off autos with that CB1. And of course the Ace Unit and Kakoa are just so strong for early game cards that your opponent's going to be absolutely overwhelmed. There are a lot of things that I want to note about this list in terms of weaknesses as well after discussing with a friend. The first thing obviously is you can only play a total of the 4 Gallatin cards of the same name. I doubt you're going to be playing Soul Saver in here because there's no restand during battle phase, and Zero Night Gallatin is just kind of the better card over the Gallatin we get in the start deck right now, just in terms of early game and being a really strong closer card. Kakoa and Alfred kind of have anti-synergy on turn 3 since Alfred shuffles, but of course you can always use Kakoa to stack something that you want to call, such as off Fire Regulus or the Nebula Knight Order, which is a really strong combo you'll see a lot of Minerva players do as well. Lien also won't work on turn 2 if you are playing Marron because you get that free write-up, so there's a little bit of anti-synergy there, but I think double Lien is still just so strong in any other turn. And Tranquilla is also a good way to avoid this as well, but of course you won't have Kakoa active on turn 1. So Lien discard Ganslot is just really strong. You can also plus. Also, if you of course ditch Ganslot off Deerang, as mentioned earlier, you plus as well. And just having more Blaster Blades in your hand is just more grade 2 bodies to rush your opponent with, or to retire your board kind of just to play for tempo and punish them for basically rushing you. So here's a more normal version of the deck right here, and I will say that Deerang is again just a very strong card. So kind of to supplement that, we're playing 2 Alfreds and then 4 Soul Saver. Of course, you can cut something else in this deck for 4 Deerang if you want that consistency, but most of the time you're not really Deeranging until turn 4, and you have so many Persona Rides here, you're likely to see them anyways. But for the most part, the core here is the same. Of course, you have 2 Blaster Blade, 2 Gancelot, and of course 4 of just your so good early game cards that will absolutely beat the living crap out of your opponents. I think you just have a little bit less grade 2s here, but of course you're perfectly fine with having Gancelot in the front row, or of course with Starry Night Size 0 or Blaster Blade dying off after they've done their job of drawing you a card or retiring your opponent's board. And again, the grade 1 in the ride line is very flexible, and same with the grade 2 as well. You could be playing the Alton ride line like mentioned earlier. I think just having Blaster Blade is really strong, specifically with Deerang, because again, it's very easy to salvage because it's the same clan as your Vanguard. But yeah, I do think Gancelot does have space in this deck. I think you can definitely be playing 1 if you wanted to be really greedy. I think 2 is kind of the number to go with, maybe 3, and I'm sure a lot of people will experiment with it as well. I think it's just a super win harder card going first, which is kind of what you need to push your opponent to high damage. So once you go into Soul Saver and, Starry Night Size 0, which is restanding, you'll have a really, really big number on side that your opponent's going to have a really hard time PGing because they can't with the auto once you do get to Persona Ride. So yeah, again, the point of the game with Keter is, of course, to always rush down your opponent, end the game on turn 4, but there's a lot of really good tools such as Deerang, a lot of really easy superior calling to just prolong the game if you have to live. So yeah, I think Keter Sanctuary with its generics is very flexible in the playstyle you want to do. I think Hostage won't be popular just because Overlord has so much easy retire right now. But again, I think Deerang is a very strong card. In fact, you could be calling a PG or whatever out of deck, overcall it Deerang out its hand. You can add Blaster Blade once you Soul Blast it out of the ride line. Of course, you can be grabbing any of your Persona rides back from drop into your hand. So I think Deerang just adds a lot of flexibility that this deck didn't really have before because, grabbing your Soul PGs is really, really, really strong. Alright, so that pretty much wraps it up for Blaster Blade. Thank you guys so much for watching. Had a lot to talk about. This recording is over 40 minutes long, so definitely one of the longest recordings I've done. Just had a lot I wanted to mention for Blaster Blade, kind of get that out of the way. Of course, when the actual product comes out, I'll do like a full video on it and how to upgrade it. Though next Thursday, we have support for Shoujo Doji, Ezel, and Maelstrom, a new batch of promos, which is going to be pretty exciting. I think Ezel and Maelstrom have already gotten a promo before, but Shoujo Doji, hopefully stealth named, hopefully really good. It being a grade 1 is already a good sign, honestly. But yeah, next week, going to be some big promos for some decks, so pretty exciting for that because those are always some really, really, really strong cards that get added into the pool. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Again, if you did enjoy, like, subscribe, the usual stuff, and I'll see you again in another Vanguard video.